Okay, viewers and listeners, get ready. This is likely going to be the longest Creative Outlet podcast segment, potentially for a long time or of all time. Um, I don't know which is going to come sooner, likely just for some time. Um, But if you'll remember back to the very first episode, which you should certainly watch if you have not done so, I gave a discussion on Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Nintendo Switch with the information we knew up to that point. But on February 20th, 2020, a lot of twos, an Animal Crossing New Horizons Nintendo Direct aired, showing off a whole lot of new things about the game. And though I could have covered it in the last episode of this podcast, I wanted to give myself some time to really think about the things that were revealed in it. And to be fair, like I said, today is March 12th. Tomorrow, a bunch of people are going to be getting their Animal Crossing New Horizons consoles, which is a topic I briefly covered in the scalping segment as a personal story about it. So you should check that out as well if you have not watched episode 3, or that segment if you prefer. But since then, there's also been a playable demo at PAX East, and the game's coming out in 8 days from my recording this, and while I know that there's plenty of people who are interested in all those little tiny details, and they're going to know everything super soon, I just want to focus on what we learned from that direct as opposed to PAX, because there's just so many tiny things that we could dive into there that it's not worth it to me. I'm gonna know this soon when I inevitably get the game, and that's way more time that I have to spend on research, and I don't have the time to dedicate to that, unfortunately. I will have linked the Nintendo Life article covering a bunch of those little findings for those who are interested. And of course, a quick YouTube search for the PAX East demo will show off a whole lot of information. Even then, pretty soon everybody's going to know it because they're going to own the game. So every mystery is going to be solved. So think of this almost more as like a pre-review of the game. Like, I'm just looking at, what did the Direct lay out? What do I think about that before I actually play it? I just like to look at the concept, to look at the ideas. And then when the game comes out, or at least, when I get it, hopefully I should be able to go back and, having played it, give a full, high-quality review, even if that means I need to go back and be like, yeah, I remember that segment where I discussed the Direct. I was wrong. But with that said, I am ready to discuss the entirety of everything that was discussed in that Direct. Keep in mind, I'm on page 8 right now. I have a grand total of 37 pages for this set of notes. Past notes were like 20 pages, 15 pages. I mean, let's put it like this. I filled up a whole brand new bottle of water just for this segment, and I would not be surprised if this segment goes over 30 minutes, and then there's a little choppy editing in the middle because of that, because I need to go between, because the video is going to stop at around 30 minutes. I'll probably pause it before that happens. I'll find a good place to stop. So I apologize in advance if there's some choppiness or if the camera gets just slightly enough off angle to be annoying, because I know that can certainly happen. But with that said, let's get into the information. And to be honest, there were quite a few things that everybody seemed to fall in love with in the Direct that I actually didn't love that much. A lot of the things that people are super hyped for, including some of like the big things. And of course, after I get the game, if I end up loving these things that I said I wouldn't, I'm going to discuss it because I have the humility to know what's wrong. I'm not going to take down this segment or this full episode because I don't agree with myself anymore. I'm going to say what I say here, and it's going to be on the record. It's that simple. So yeah, let's go over every major element. So as with past Animal Crossing games, you get to decide which town layout you want. In past games, you would be on the train or in the taxi or in like a car or something, and you'd get I'd have someone talking to you. It could be Cap'n. It was Rover in Animal Crossing on the GameCube and in New Leaf. And you just get to pick your town layout. That's what you would have unless you reset it. In this case, you pick it while you're on in the airplane, and that just makes sense because it's the system they've used since the beginning. It's not like it's a broken system in need of fixing. But a new twist added to that is that you get to pick between living in the northern or southern hemisphere of Earth. So events that take place during the summer in the northern hemisphere will be snowed over when you're living in the southern hemisphere, and vice versa. It's like Christmas will be summery in the southern hemisphere in December, which makes sense because that's how the real world works. And you don't have to pick the hemisphere that you live in real life as well, which to me it's kind of a superfluous feature. Like, it's great that it's there for people who want to switch up their hemisphere and what weather there is, but it isn't something that I think is going to make or break anyone's experience. Unless in past entries players in the southern hemisphere played with weather only in the northern hemisphere. If it was like, it's looking like Halloween, late October out here, and it's like super green and lush here in the southern hemisphere, but it looks all dead in Animal Crossing. If it's the case that is how it worked, then allowing players to pick their hemispheres to make sure that everyone is properly represented, that's a great thing to me. But to me, as somebody who lives in the northern hemisphere and is likely going to pick that, it's just kind of superfluous. Like, it's great that it's there. Don't think it's all super important, but it's a fun, harmless addition. And if anything, it could be useful if there have been problems with representing the southern hemisphere in the past, or vice versa. Then they talk about the seasons, which look about the same as ever. And obviously I discussed a little bit of that in the first episode with the screenshots, looking at things like how there were leaf piles in the fall. The events change as the seasons change, as do the materials that you find to craft this. Craft with a T at the end. Like in the winter, we got to see a villager pick up an ornament that fell off of a pine tree. And the narrator talks about things like finding seeds and mushrooms in the fall, which isn't too different because already in November, at least in Animal Crossing New Leaf, that was when mushrooms would pop up all over the place. So there's nothing all too new here other than in regards to what you can necessarily craft with, and seasons just look the same as ever. Just like with Animal Crossing New Leaf, instead of starting with a house, you start with a tent that you get to choose the location for. But it also seems like the locations that buildings can be put has been expanded quite a bit, which is great, because in New Leaf, players would be restricted by things like, I don't know, that's pretty close to the river. You can't put that there. That's right by a cliff. When they were trying to place their home, or if they were trying to place public works projects. So to me, this is a welcome change. If I want to live on the edge, and I want to live on a cliff, I'm going to live on the edge, and live on a literal cliff edge. But a feature related to that I'm torn on is the ability to choose where villagers live. Which this is one of those features that everyone loved because they're like, oh my goodness, now they can't ruin my perfect flower patch or my perfect layouts here. But I am torn on it. Like, obviously I see that utility, that's great. But the way I view Animal Crossing, at least, is that it is not an ultimate customization game. And I think that's a lot of what people want it to be, is like basically playing with dolls and getting to make everything yourself. Which I can see why they think it, and it's not necessarily that it's wrong. That's not how I view the game. And I view it with the desire that these animals, since they are like living creatures, they're not real living creatures, but they're living creatures in the game, they should have their own agency and be able to decide where they want to live. Like, you know, if I get to decide where I want to live, they should get to decide where they want to live, right? And I get that people get whiny about like, but my flowers or my paths. But that's just not something that I have the time to care about. Maybe if it was something like there were stumps with icons on them when you chopped down the tree, like chopped down trees, like you could find those with a Triforce on it, or with I don't know if there were squares, but I'm pretty sure there were triangles. And the only reason I would be upset about losing those is because you get more fancy mushrooms to grow around them that are more expensive. But like I said, otherwise I don't care. It's not that important to me. I have never thought that much about the layout. I just kind of put flowers wherever, and then if I put other ones around it, they just like, whoo, grow way, way out. And because I like my town to be as natural as it can be, and that includes letting islanders have their own agency to pick where they live, unless the game is going to force me to pick where they live, in which case, to me, that's just even more annoying, because that just doesn't mesh with how I view Animal Crossing. And that's okay. That's just how I see the game. And if other people want it to be this ultimate customization game, that's okay, but that just doesn't appeal to me. The next thing discussed in the video was the Resident Services tent, and it allows you to do things like sell and buy goods, get advice on how to live on the island, and of course use the DIY table, the crafting table, and you're going to need to find DIY recipes and get materials like ore from rocks, wood from trees. There are going to be some DIY customization workshops that let you change the color of your furniture. This is a feature in Animal Crossing New Leaf, but it was expanded in Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer, because in New Leaf you could go to retail and take items to Cyrus, and for a few thousand bells you would get it given back to you in a different color. Great. Now you just get to do that, but instantly. And I think you have a little bit more leeway on how things are recolored, because in New Leaf it was like you can either get all of these colors in one. Like I had the stripe set. I don't know. I started the game. For whatever reason, I got a whole lot of stripe items in my shop. And then when I got the carpet and the wallpaper for it and realized it was in black and white, when all of the items otherwise initially come in blue and white, I took them all to Cyrus and got them turned gray. But now it seems like you're going to have a little bit more leeway to choose, like, well, maybe instead I want blue and gray, for example. I don't know. I haven't seen the stripe set in the game. I'm just putting that out there as a hypothetical. The next facility discussed was the airport. Of course, when you start the game, you started at the airport, because that's how you get to the island. But it also lets you travel to other players' islands and also open your island up for multiplayer. Players can travel to each other's islands via local wireless play and online play. Up to 8 players can be on an island at once through either type of play and by playing on the same console. And the airport also seems to be the place, or seems to be like the post office of the game, I should say. Because you can send postcards to your villagers, not unlike the letters from previous games. And this actually gets into a bigger underlying point about New Horizons that's unclear, which is what has happened to a bunch of the special characters. Because with things like the autosave capability, you don't have a need for Mr. Rossetti, but don't worry, we do know what he's up to, and I will discuss that later. But if we send, in this example, right, if we send postcards to the airport, then is there no post office? Is there no Pete? Is there no Pelly? Is there no Phyllis? Phyllis is my favorite one. I say semi-sarcastically. I mean, she is my favorite, but I know that she's obviously a mean, rude pelican, unlike Pete and Pelly. But that's what makes her funny. And if like they're not, I mean, if the post office doesn't exist, what are they doing? Are they even in the game at all? Will their amiibo cards have any functionality? I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'll talk about that later. Next, the presentation discusses the Nook Inc. special services. The first special service is something that we've known since E3, which is the Nook phone. This phone comes with a bunch of apps that let you do certain functions, like you can take pictures with it, you can look at your DIY recipes, check on your Nook miles, which is the next thing I will discuss. And then they discuss the very Splatoon-like daily broadcast that Tom Nook reads to the island, which makes sense because the team that developed the team that develops Animal Crossing is also the Splatoon team, so of course they're going to add that to the game. And this daily broadcast is likely how you find out about things like the bug off and the fishing tourney, and it's like, hey guys, it's this holiday, isn't that great? Third service are the aforementioned Nook Miles. So Nook Miles are like tiny bite-sized goals that you get. And these can be daily goals, they can be long-term goals that net you miles. And these miles can be exchanged to pay off your getaway package and later to receive items from the Nook Miles terminal. And to be honest, I don't really like it. So if you'll remember, when Animal Crossing New Leaf got the Welcome Amiibo update, they added a campground where villagers would bring their RVs, and you could get goods there from Harvey, who's the dog that runs the campground. Get it? Harvey, RV. And he had this new currency called Meow Coupons. And the way that you got Meow Coupons was basically the same sort of system. Each day and each week, you had goals to complete that would grant you Meow Coupons that you could receive from a terminal just outside the town hall. And, well, it was a harmless addition, right? It's not, I didn't care. It really didn't add anything to the experience for me, because most of the time, if I happened to complete a Meow Coupon goal, it was a complete accident. I was like, oh, I did this thing for a Meow Coupon. Great. I guess I'll get it. But I wasn't like going out of my way every day to be like, all right, now I gotta look at my Meow Coupon goals so I can get my Meow Coupons, because it didn't really add anything to the experience for me. And part of that is, and again, this comes down to my view of Animal Crossing too, to me, Animal Crossing is not about having little goals. It's like in this perfect spot between a game like Minecraft, which is also a game I don't particularly like, but we can go over that another day. Because the thing about Minecraft is, like, you have to make every single goal. And I need some form of goal in the game. I need to know that I'm building toward something. I can't just out of the blue be like, I'm gonna build a house, I guess, because that sort of thing just doesn't occur to me, right? It just seems like aimless exploration. But it's also not, on the other extreme, linear, like, goal is obvious to you sort of game, like a 2D Mario game, where it's like, okay, I'll get to the end. Yay! Because in past Animal Crossing games, you still had goals, but they were big goals that you could figure out how to complete. So this is something like, okay, I need to pay off my house. That is a concrete goal, but how you get there is totally unique to your playtime. So you then need to make your own mini goals, like, I'm going to catch this number of rare bugs or plant this many fruit trees so I can sell fruit from them each day to make money, right? You even have like big goals like, I'm going to finish the encyclopedia. I'm going to fill the museum with all the fossils or something. But those are big goals that you will figure out. And, you'll probably have some luck to need to do them. And it's not as simple as, catch this many fish today, catch this many fish in total overall, right? And then you'll gain a few points for it. So even though I think Nook Miles will be this harmless addition, and there's going to be tons of people who get all sorts of use out of it, and they're going to love it. At least for the way I play Animal Crossing, it takes away some of that spirit, because the way I see it, Animal Crossing is supposed to be about making your own experience with these animal friends who live in town with you. And if that just so happens to mean that I want to go out and catch 15 bugs, and there are 15 different bugs, it shouldn't be because I wanted to get points for it so I can get more things. It should be about the intrinsic reward that, all right, I did this. I feel good for doing this. That being said, there's still definitely some rewards, some rewards that I like that I'm going to use, like the wheel that lets you instantly change tools. That is a reward I'm getting. But even if I like the rewards, I still don't care for a system that tries to make Animal Crossing a more directed experience, when you should make your own goals, like your own little goals, out of the big goals that are given to you. Again, at least that's how I see it. I don't think most people see it that way, and that's fine. And like I said earlier, if I end up loving that, I will let everyone know, and I'll be like, I was wrong. Let's see, what is next? I've already gone through 7-ish pages of this, and we're at about an hour in of audio. So I don't even think I'm through the first part of these notes, the first part of the presentation. So the next thing that they discuss then is some first-timer advice for living on a deserted island. And the video actually, like, the direct makes a funny bit about how it's like, you're gonna find some dangerous creatures, which, while they can harm your villager, like the wasps, you don't actually die. You just pass out from getting stung more than once. And I'm pretty sure, like, that bit was more so to point out, like, the extent of bugs and fish you can find. Plus, you're always supposed to just buy medicine. It's been in the standard of Animal Crossing, pretty sure, since the first game. Though, in the past, you would also lose your bee sting if you just saved and restarted your game, but I don't know if that's returning. I can't think of why it wouldn't, but if it doesn't, whatever. But one benefit out of seeing that bit is that we get to see how purchasing items is going to work in the game, at least at the very start. Timmy and Tommy have a menu of items that players can buy, including tools, flower seeds, and medicine. But there's also another row below that we don't really get to see the items of, but pretty soon here we'll know exactly what it is. So for me, it's like, it's great. Still have the option to buy tools if you're not really into crafting, which, at least as of right now, I don't care about crafting. There's a reason I never played Zelda Breath of the Wild, because I don't like to craft. That's another reason why I don't like Minecraft. I just brought that up. It's because I don't care for crafting. Especially because in the case of Minecraft, you have no idea how to craft them. But it seems like in more recent updates, they've been more clear about that. And in New Horizons, you're going to have the DIY recipes, so it's going to be clear. But honestly, I just want to buy the tools, because that's how it's always been done. It's simpler, it's easier. That's what I like. But that's the only other... The caveat to that is you might only be able to buy the basic tools. So I really want to see how far I can go with, like, the traditional Animal Crossing options before I have to, like, use some of the new features that I'm kind of wary of, but, just see what happens. We also hear a bit about nighttime and how scary it is, but all we get as the audience is to see Wisp's return, not for Amiibo, which is important because we'll discuss Amiibo later. After that, we get to see Gulliver's return, and like in past games, Gulliver washes up on the beach. In Wild World and City Folk, though, you would shoot down a spaceship with your slingshot, and then you'd wake him up, and he'd ask you a question about the last place he traveled to, because he can't remember where it was. He has lost his memory. You'd get like a hint in things he said, and then you'd guess a country in the real world, and then a day later, you would receive an item from the mail from that country, and it's usually a mini version of the landmark from there. In New Horizons, however, you're going to go around and look for parts to his communicator, which seems like it's just a Nook phone. But you'll probably still get the same sorts of rewards from him, which is just like, hey, thanks for helping me get my communicator parts. Here's an item from this country I went to. You're a real pal. Then we get to hear about the rescue service, which is basically just a fast travel system, which you can also use if you get lost, if that's even possible, and if you somehow get stuck, and it is helmed by none other than the great, legendary, he made young children cry, Sonny Rossetti. So in other words, Rossetti is no longer at the helm of the Reset Surveillance Center, because of the autosave, and as evidence from the fact that the icon for the helicopter looks just like his face, and that the operator talks in like the same sort of way Rossetti talks, with like some yelling, but also some like quieter times. Plus, the music that plays when a player is being picked up is the Rossetti theme. So he is our rescue service, and I am excited if I ever need to use it. I want to go over some of the optional extras that the presentation discussed. So the first optional extra I would not call an extra so much as an obvious form of progression, because just like in Animal Crossing New Leaf, you will upgrade from a tent to a full-blown house and be able to add rooms and upstairs and a basement. And not to mention, like, it seems you're going to be able to put any items you don't want to keep out in storage, which is just the logical conclusion of the secret storage room upgrade from the Welcome Amiibo update to New Leaf. How exactly you get items out of storage is unclear, because they never showed that off. But hey, more storage, more places to put stuff, I love that. It also seems like the home designer from Happy Home Designer and from the Welcome Amiibo update is also returning, but with adjustments to work on a Nintendo Switch, because you don't have a bottom screen to have like a layout of your house to put things on. But one major change to it, though, is with walls. So in New Leaf, you could finally first hang items onto walls in the first place, but you're limited that you only have like one line in which everything could be hung on. So even if you had something that appeared like it was higher up on the wall, you couldn't hang something else below it. But in New Horizons, you can do that, which is great, because I quite enjoyed hanging things on walls, and being able to put things above and below it is helpful, especially because I'm an Animal Crossing hoarder. But at the same time, it also seems like there are no ceiling items as there were in Happy Home Designer. In Happy Home Designer, there were things like there are these paper lights, and there were ceiling fans. Those things don't seem to be in New Horizons, but we could be wrong. I might have just not seen them yet. The next extra comes in the form of the Nook Miles ticket. These tickets allow you to travel on island tours. They basically just seem to generate a random island for you to travel to get supplies from that might not be on your island. The key reason I think most people would want to travel would be to get new fruit. And there also may be villagers on that island that you can convince to move to your island, which I think is interesting. And I do like that they take the Tortimer Island concept from New Leaf and make it different every time, because that was the only flaw with Tortimer Island to me, was that, you know, you had one island, it was the same island, but if you went to someone, like if you went to a friend's town and went to their island, it would be different. So like, you just weren't used to you would get used to your layout, and then that gets kind of boring. I will kind of miss the tour games, though. I did like that from New Leaf, and there's no indication that they're coming back. The next extra is a bonus app for your Nook phone that you get if more than one player lives on the island. So up to 8 players can have accounts on the same island, and with the Party Play app, you can initiate local play on the same console, with one player as the leader who directs the camera to like follow them around, because it's a 3D game, so it has a camera, while everyone else just has to follow the leader's whims. But this leader can be changed in the middle of play, which lets the players take turns doing things like selling items to the Nooklings, and just pretty much anything that brings up a menu is under the power of the leader. Also of note, any items that followers pick up, like fish and bugs, are stored in a recycle box that they need to go pick up. So if you plan on playing with your little siblings, for example, you better make sure they know this, that no item gets left behind, and then you have crying little brothers and sisters and cousins later on. And while this next thing is still an optional extra, to me, this is worthy of its own discussion. The Nintendo Switch Online app will have its own Animal Crossing New Horizons specific services, just like how there is a Splatoon 2 service and a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate service. The Nook Link service is the way that you can scan QR code patterns into the game, which to me, I just want to point out, that is like a fun and unique way of getting around the fact that the Switch doesn't have a camera. It's like this weird sort of, it's a form of metagaming. I don't know if that's a term that's used in other contexts, and if it means something else in other contexts, but what I mean by this as metagaming is that you are taking a real world object and using it for your game, which is awesome. It's like it looks like using the Nook phone in the real world. And honestly, I'll likely do a whole segment on Switch Online and the app another time, but you know, as much as it shouldn't have to be a thing, I legitimately think that of any use, this QR code scanning is a good use for it. Switch Online app will also act as like another option for the keyboard that you would separately have to pull up to chat with in New Leaf. It is still an option in-game, but on Switch, unless you use the touchscreen in handheld mode, it's going to be a lot more clunky because you have to go around with an icon and like do the old hunt and peck method, basically. And of course, everyone's favorite form of voice chat will also be available. So at this point in the presentation, part 1 ended. So yes, this probably 20-30 minutes that I've talked here is only about part 1. That's something that I should have established earlier, is that this presentation was in 3 parts. Part 1 going over things we already knew about and expanding on them, although they obviously also talked about a whole lot of new things. Part 2 was entirely new info, and Part 3 was FAQ. The next topic of discussion was about how new villagers will come to your island. So much like with the starting villagers, you get to pick a plot which will be developed for that villager. So you don't get to pick where the villager puts their tent. You get to scout out a plot of land and be like, a house can go here. Now I already went over what I think about the whole you have to pick where villagers live earlier on in this segment. But logistically, I feel like this at least makes more sense. Because this is just like how houses are built in real life. You know, a plot is picked, a house is built, and someone moves in. I still actually prefer the old system, but I'm not going to get curmudgeonly about that again, because I already did that earlier, and I'm sure a bunch of people who choose to watch this will be angry at me about it. And then also additional facilities that have been staples are going to return, like the Able Sisters, clothing shop, Nook's Cranny, and the museum, and you get to decide where those go as well. Speaking of the museum, I have the same commentary that I'm sure you've heard a million times already in a bunch of other YouTube videos. I like the expanded new look of the museum with things like a river in the bug section. But I really want to know what's up with paintings in Crazy Red. Like, are they returning? Are they not returning? No one knows. And that would be great, because if I don't have to collect art, honestly, I'd be way happier, because art is like the only thing that's like, this is impossible to do when I was playing New Leaf. That's how I felt. When discussing Nook's Cranny, the narrator mentions how it will have items that you can't craft yourself, which makes sense, because, I mean, Nook's Cranny is an Animal Crossing staple, and as much as I know how people love crafting in games, you can't craft everything. There has to be some things you buy, otherwise it's not really Animal Crossing, at least to me. They just kind of glossed over the Able Sisters, but I do like the info that has come out about the Able Sisters since this presentation. Like, there's this wardrobe area on the right of the store that lets you buy any item on display that day in all of the colors that it comes in, which is a super welcome improvement over having to buy, like, I'm going to buy the red bar shirt, and now I'm going to buy the green bar shirt. I can just buy, insert color here, bar shirt that I want right away, for example. They talked about the campsite, which is not the same as Harvey's campground in New Leaf. These are different things. The campsite is returning, which lets one villager come to camp that you can convince to move in. It's basically like a temporary house, so to speak. And it's basically unchanged as far as I can see from New Leaf. Resident Services is going to expand from a tent to a town hall-like building. And you know what that means. That's where you're going to find Isabelle. So Isabelle lets you do the traditional town hall things, like change your town tune, change the flag, get an evaluation of the island. But it's also where you get to make changes to your house and move facilities if you don't like where they are anymore. Resident Services is also going to act like kind of like a plaza of sorts. I'm going to get to see Label/Labelle, Harvey and Celeste in the footage, but odds are this is where you're gonna find like Katrina the fortune teller. Maybe Gracie the giraffe is gonna show up for Gracie Grace. We don't know yet. We haven't seen anything of her. And this is where you're gonna experience holidays like American Thanksgiving, Easter. Well, it's Bunny Day in the game, I should say. We also see fishing tourneys and the bug off held there. Remember, I talked about Celeste. Celeste also specifically mentions a wand, and then we see footage of a wand that lets you change into certain themed outfits, and I really want to know more about this, because it's so, like, mysterious. It's just like, it's all nonchalantly brought up, like Celeste is there talking about, what if you had a magic wand? And then we see it, and then it's like this circle of outfits, and I want to know more, right? It just piqued my curiosity. Like I said, there's also traveling merchants around, like Sahara, the carpet and wallpaper camel. You'll see Kix, the shoe-selling skunk, and the new Daisy May, the turnip-selling hog. But what happened to Joan? The lady who used to sell turnips for more than 60 morns. Guess we don't know what's happening with her. Hopefully she's not, like, dead, but we have had at least one character die in the series, Frillard. When it comes to holidays, though, I talked about holidays a little bit. The narrator does talk about free updates being part of that, and I don't really know what to think about that. I don't know if that means, like, the holidays aren't ready and in the game, or if their plan is to change how holidays work each year or something. It's kind of intriguing in the sense that I just want to know the answer, but I can't think of why they necessarily need to do updates for these. But whatever, if it's fine, I guess it's fine. In the next clip, we get to see a brief bit about new travel tools, like the pole vault and the ladder that lets you directly climb up cliffs, which are also two very welcome features to me. At the same time, of course, I still want to, like, build bridges, and I'm probably going to use those more because I don't really care to switch tools all the time, even if I'm going to have that circle, alright? Speaking of bridges, we also get to see the bridge options, and there are these new staircase options to make getting across these rivers and up to new heights even easier without having to use The tool, and that actually gets into the next new edition, the big one that people were probably the most in love with, that I, at least currently, still do not care for. You can terraform the island using the Island Designer. So this feature lets you pave paths, which to me are one of the most overrated things to do in Animal Crossing, because people make a huge deal out about, like, I have to have the most perfectly designed town. But I could not care. This is not this is not Sim City. This is Animal Crossing. If I wanted to design a city, I would play Sim City. And I like the more natural aesthetic that comes with having, or that comes without having paths and like rows of trees and flowers. I just want like trees to pop up wherever and to have flowers kind of go all over the place. Because this is, I mean, this is a deserted island. This is a little remote town. This isn't like, I think of it, it doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it's almost like an 1800s type town where it's like these things aren't necessarily orderly. I want it to be natural. And I get that some people, like, they love it, but to me it's just like needless customization. Like I just want some things to be how they are, and that includes like the basic grassy layout. I mean, to be fair though, I do like some of the uses you can get out of it. I'm not saying I will never use it. I'm not saying it has no uses. Like, they show a makeshift playground in the footage where the player like made this area of sand and they put toys in it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cute. That's a neat little thing you can do with it. So it's not like that I'll never ever use this, that it's a totally worthless feature, but I think that the culture in the Animal Crossing community that's led to this feature isn't one that I just buy into. To me, it just, I don't care about all that customization. It's not that important to me. But the bigger features with an E are the landscaping and the waterscaping. So with waterscaping, you can create land where there was once a river. But my problem with this is that it basically makes building bridges and staircases completely moot. I understand that all these features have to be unlocked before you can waterscape and landscape, but like, what incentive do I have after I get the ability to like just make a path of land or to make a river somewhere and just magically materialize it? Like, what incentive do I have to spend bells on building a bridge when I could just materialize this path out of the air for free? I mean, there's also just some decorating you can do, like making a waterfall. But to me, like I said, that's just all superfluous. It's not to say I won't use it, not to say I won't try it. And if I end up falling in love with it, I will certainly come back here and admit it. But as it stands at this current moment, I think it's just pandering to the super fan, which is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, like, as a political scientist here, I think it's probably the best thing Nintendo could do, but I just personally don't really care for the idea because I think it leads to too much customization, too much power to the player. Like, there has to be some sort of guideline that the players have to have to meet. Like, there has to be something that they're structured around. It's not the same as a goal, it's just some sort of structure that they have. But I think that should cover the entire second section, which means we are in the home stretch here. We're almost done with this topic, and then we can go on to topics 3 and 4. Alright, and quick before we get restarted and getting into the home stretch of this portion, I just want to give the disclosure that, yes, the battery died in the camera. And now I simply swapped it out for the other battery that was fully charged. I mean, it was charging while I was recording this, but at the time it finally got to being fully charged. So if anything seems off for my visual viewers, that is why. But I know this has been a long segment. We're almost there. And then when it comes to the FAQs, I only really want to go over the interesting stuff. Of course, when I took notes, I noted pretty much everything, but, stuff like how up to 8 players share one island, not all that interesting to me because we already kind of talked about that with the party play feature. But of course I understand the concerns that people have with having multiple people share the same one island. But that can be a topic for another time if we see if, like, when the game comes out, people end up having a bunch of problems with that. So, what are some FAQs? Animal Crossing New Horizons does support Amiibo! Yeah! So, the Animal Crossing Amiibo figures and the cards are compatible with New Horizons, but it appears that the functionality is pretty much the same as in New Leaf when it comes to, like, your normal villagers that are on the cards. Like, you scan it. In this case, I think it's at the Nook Miles terminal. Could be a different terminal, but that's what it looked like in the footage. You scan it, and they're like, hey, that looks like a bunny. They use bunny in the footage. It's like, that looks like a Goldie amiibo. Do you want Goldie to come visit your town? And then you can be like, hey, Goldie, welcome to my town. Would you move in? And she'll be like, yeah, I would love to move in. What exactly happens with special villagers in terms of, like, figures and cards isn't all too clear yet. Amiibo are also usable in the Photopia side mode, where you get to dress up villagers for photo shoots. Neat! When it comes to friends coming to your island, you can open up the island to any friend, or set it so that your friends must know the dodo code to get on the island. Which should be helpful to make sure that only certain friends that you want coming to your island can come for whatever reason. If you're just like, I want a play date with only this person, they just tell them the code, they can come to the island, and then someone else who happens to be playing can't go to the island. Furthermore, friends must be on your best friends list, which is on that Nook link, remember, from the Switch Online app, before they can use certain tools on your island, like axes and shovels, which I'm sure will make problems in that you'll get friends who are like, what the heck, man? Why am I not in your best friends list? I'm a best friend. You can trust me with shovels. And then, meanwhile, if you let them do that, if you know in the back of your mind, if you let them do that, they're going to bury a pitfall seed somewhere, and then you're going to get pranked by them. Let's see. The status on save data loss is still confusing. So, as we've known for a while, Animal Crossing New Horizons does not support the save data cloud backup feature of Nintendo Switch Online to prevent any time traveling shenanigans. What? I mean, like I said this earlier, this is the same team that did Splatoon 2, and wouldn't you know it, Splatoon 2 also doesn't support save data cloud backup, in their case, because they don't want, like, cheating happening. And, like, I get it, but what is it? Why is it this same team has made 2 games it doesn't utilize the save data cloud backup? Like, come on, guys, it isn't that terrible. I get it, but, like, come on, it's not that important. Because, like, obviously, I would much prefer that it supports the cloud backup, but it seems like it not supporting cloud backup is set in stone. But it seems like there's going to be a service for recovering backed up data or save data on some kind of server, but what exactly that's going to look like isn't certain. At first, there was a note at the bottom of the video saying that it would be one time only, but that note has changed. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with it. Hopefully everything will be okay. But I would just rather have the save data cloud backup because we're paying money for that Switch Online service, and that'll be much easier. I mean, obviously, it would be great if save data cloud backup was just available to everyone, which it should be, but whatever. That is what it is right now. There are going to be free holiday updates throughout the year, like I noted, including a Day 1 update that allows players to celebrate Bunny Day a few weeks later, otherwise known as Easter in the real world. And there will also be a special offer for special items between Animal Crossing New Horizons and the mobile Animal Crossing Pocket Camp, which, as of recording, I'm pretty sure that just started today, March 12th. So look at me being, like, topically relevant for a change. But you know what? I think we did it. We finally covered every little piece of information from the Animal Crossing New Horizons Direct. We are 8 days. When you see this, it might be less than 7 days away from the game releasing, so the lid is going to be blown off of all this information. Like I said, I'm excited, but I'm also cautious about some of these changes. Like I said with this segment, even though it's not newsily relevant necessarily by the time it comes out, just think of this as my preview, not a pre-review, a preview of the game. But hopefully when the game does come out, I can give some kind of review. I can't say it enough. If I'm wrong about all of these things and I'm like, I don't know about that, I will certainly be okay with letting you know, because I'm an adult. And it's a video game, and I can certainly be wrong. Otherwise, we are finally done with topic 2. Time to move on to the more personal topic number 3 today.